Welcome, everybody, to the Beards and Bible podcast. My name is Josh. I'm joined on this lovely Tuesday evening by my good buddy Gabe, who has a full belly, a radiant countenance.
Yes. Greasy chicken fingers.
Ooh.
I still often,
not
often I shouldn't say, but I still from time to time reflect on a podcast we did where you confessed to eating hot wings wearing latex gloves. And I'm still trying to process that. I'm going to be honest with you. It's tough. It's tough for me to process.
But on an evening like this evening, after you have greasy chicken hands, you're kind of thinking about it. I can tell.
I thought about it because I thought, that is really practical. But then as I looked across the table and saw my entire family and Noah's lady friend, Gabrielle, sitting there, I thought I would look like quite a weirdo wearing latex gloves right now if I was eating. I actually thought about you tonight at dinner.
Like, man, all greased up for surgery.
I'm just not ready. It's like, either like farting or going number 2 around your spouse. It's like, I'm just not ready to open that door yet with latex gloves and chicken fingers. Chicken wings.
I think on my honeymoon, I didn't go to the bathroom for probably 4 days.
You were just stocked up.
I was so nervous to,
yeah.
Even though, it was like excusing yourself. We're sharing a hotel room and, but eventually cracked the ice and 15 years later,
yeah, she can.
No shame at all.
She can pick them out of a crowd. Yeah.
If our wives are listening right now, they're probably rolling their eyes. So, yeah. So how you been, man? You been good?
Yeah. Trying to think if there's anything eventful. I did for the first time ever in my life. I got a deep tissue massage.
What?
I've never had a massage. Never had someone like a professional give me a massage. I was just really adverse to that idea for some reason. Just weirded me out. But yesterday, very nice country lady named Tammy gave me a deep tissue massage, and it rocked my world, man. It was yeah.
Tammy rocked your world.
Tammy caused me a lot of discomfort.
Yeah.
She moved my neck around in ways that I had never imagined I'd be able to move it ever again.
No, Tammy.
Yeah, she called her son TJ. She called her son TJ in from the front desk and had TJ cradled my head in his hands while she. Okay, so TJ was holding.
Is this a common Alabama practice? She's like, "Hey, TJ, come in here."
I don't know. TJ.
He needs some help from my son.
So TJ was cradling the back of my skull in his hands, in the palm of his hands, and moving my head one way, while she had like a towel in her hand or something. I don't know why she doesn't need her bare hands, but she had like a towel in her hand, and she grabbed this part of my neck on the side right here, and she was pulling down on that like tendon or something right there so hard. Like she like grabbed her wrist with this hand and then a towel with this one, and it was pulling down while TJ was rotating my skull. And you talk about pain, man. You talk about pain.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like you get a massage. It sounds like there's a family that lives near you that decided to come together and you paid money to torture you. That's what it sounds like.
They had a pretty convincing Craigslist ad, so I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, they were really good, and yeah, I mean, it was
TJ.
It was a really deep spiritual lesson in it because it was painful in the moment, but then when I walked out, I felt like I felt new. I felt
discipline is unpleasant, right? I'm preaching through Hebrews 12 this week, so that's a very apropos.
So you go get a massage this week, and then you can use that.
Well, I'll tell you what I am doing this week that is going to be a spiritual lesson. I'm running a half marathon on Saturday, and then that evening I am preaching the text that says, "Since we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us run the race that is set before us with endurance." So I'm going to try really hard not to sprinkle in little tidbits about my race from that morning, but it's probably going to happen.
By the way, I did run a half marathon.
I mean, speaking of running a race that's set before us with endurance,
I totally forgot. Gosh, I should have mentioned this. I ran a half marathon this morning. I mean, not a big deal, but like,
Not a big deal. It's not a full, but
Just
it's
yeah.
I've also done one of those, so in case you're wondering.
Mm, mm,
How do you?
yeah.
We've talked about this before. How do you sprinkle that into conversation?
Oh, I don't just sprinkle it in. I'm just like, bam. I'm like the equivalent of like a vegan up in the room with having run marathons. I mean, hey, dude, I'm like, I put in the time and the work and the effort. I'm just like, nearly every interaction has to work its way to the idea that I want you to know that I've run
Yeah,
marathons.
yeah,
I mean, it's like,
yeah.
hey, that plant behind you is green. You know what else is green? This bib I wore in a marathon one time. It was like the same shade of green, but that
Yeah.
wasn't my fastest marathon. My fastest marathon was actually this one, and then yeah. So I mean, it's just as easy as that.
I've always said the best part of running is
Mm-hmm.
judging everyone else who doesn't.
Yeah,
Just as the best part of getting up early is judging everybody else who doesn't.
yeah, yeah.
So just that sense of snide superiority you feel for doing it. So
No, it's
yeah,
like you try not to make it your whole personality for sure. But it is a
yeah.
big accomplishment. I mean, it is really big. It's like
I think
you don't know until you've done it how much it changes you.
yeah. Well, I think what it is sometimes is if I find myself peppering it in, what I'm really doing is I'm trying to find someone else who's also run.
Mm.
Because I
Mhm.
love to
Mhm.
hear their story of how they got into it, races that they've run, what was their
Yeah.
experience, and I don't honestly mean to talk about it as much as I do, but I live in a small town and people see me running,
Yeah.
and so then they ask me about it, and that's usually how it gets brought up. But sometimes I feel like a giant d bag talking about it as much as I
Mm.
do. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna try not to as I preach through Hebrews 12 this weekend after having run a race that's set before me with endurance,
Yeah.
hopefully. So we'll see.
It's tough. Well, it's like I mean,
Yeah.
it's like having when you talk to someone like you're a dad, we're dads, and one of the things it's a easy go to when you have small talk with people is like kids, right? And you
Yeah.
try to find. I mean, that's what we do in conversation with people that we don't know well. We try to find common ground where we can. Oh, you know the so
Mhm.
and so. Oh, yeah, I know so and so. Oh, you've done this. Oh, you have kids. You find common ground, and then it's immediately like that conversation becomes more fluid
Sure.
and natural. So maybe that's for me, a big motivation in talking about running a lot is I want when people go, "Oh man, I don't think I could ever do that." Then I'm like, "Oh,
Me
dude, you
too.
totally could do it.
Me
Do
too.
you want
Yeah.
to
I
do it?"
would.
Like, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
shouldn't
Yeah.
have said that because I will. You give me by the end of the year, I will have you running a marathon. Like,
Man, that's one of the greatest joys now is finding people who like seem very insecure about that. They're
yeah,
like, man, I can't. And I just want to go, man, come run with me. Like I want, I
yeah,
would,
yeah,
I'm going to find joy in seeing you
hmm
break through all those different mental barriers that you've set up and then, be able to celebrate with you as you know, have that really cool experience of accomplishing something big. So,
yeah. I mean, a good friend of mine that I worked with, he uh was he. I mean, he was just a couch potato. I mean, he would say that himself. And when we started working together, I'd be like, "Hey, man, come out and run with me." We run around a local park, and I was like, "Come run with me sometime." He did it, and he just hung in there, and he kept doing it and doing it. And eventually, he worked his way up to running. Well, he was there at the Chattanooga Marathon.
oh yeah. What
Yeah,
was his
yeah,
name?
Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Joe. Yeah. He
so
had a really
he
good time. He
yeah,
beat
really
both
good
you and I.
time, like
Yeah.
faster than me. Like, I mean, he's run
Hmm.
multiple marathons now. Well, he just graduated Army basic training. Always wanted to join the Army. He like wanted, but he was afraid of the physical aspects of it. But he
Yeah.
just texted me and he graduated this past weekend. He's like, dude, thank you so much. Just you getting me into running has literally changed my life and
Wow.
given me the confidence that I need to do this. And I just completed
That's
basic
awesome,
training
man.
and he was like top of his class and everything. And yeah, it's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
cool.
yeah. That is cool. Yeah, I think for me, it's like the discipline of forcing yourself to do hard things
Yeah.
always has like an awesome payoff and an awesome reward. And
Yeah.
so I think for me, like being able to share that with other men, because I feel like we have such a culture right now of men that want to be masculine, but they have
Mm.
so much insecurity and they're so beat down
Yeah.
just to be able to tell them, like, man, the greatest enemy that you've got to conquer is the one looking back at you in the mirror. And like the
Yeah.
excuses that guy gives you. If you can push through the excuses that guy gives you, then man, the sky's the limit. You can do far more than you think that you're able to do. And so
Yeah.
I don't know. That's part of what I find rewarding about it. That's why I like sharing it and talking
Yeah. And
about it. So
I think for a lot of men, including myself, one of the biggest fears we have is a fear of failure.
Oh
But then
yeah.
it's also kind of met and challenged by a fear of being average.
Mm-hmm.
But I think those two are always at tension with one another. Of fear of average, fear of failure,
Yep.
and you have to um, overcome that fear of failure in order to be more than just average,
Sure.
or So I think like you said, coaching people and encouraging people to get over that fear of failure it is so cool to see and so cool to experience, and giving the confidence to do that. That just energizes me more than that's
Oh
a
yeah,
huge motivation factor. But
man.
anyways, yeah,
Yeah. Gosh, you need to come up to Nashville this weekend and run it. Come
yeah, I
on,
would love
man.
to. I would love
Come
to.
on, man. You don't have anything going on.
I would love to. Don't tempt me.
Don't tempt me with a good time. Get Tammy and TJ to come up here and be your coach.
Yeah.
Well, um, tonight we're gonna go do a little smorgasbord. We're gonna be
Okay.
a little bit of tariffs, a little bit of
Mm.
Pope, a little bit of who's gonna be the next Pope, and yeah. Before we jump into those, we have a listener question from our friend Matt.
Mm.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for sending us this question. And here is Matt's question that we're going to take a couple minutes to tackle before we jump into the other stuff. His question is this: why don't most churches sing the Psalms? In Colossians and Ephesians, Paul tells us to sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. In some
Mm.
traditions, they've continued this practice, but I'm curious if there was a reason evangelicals at large have chosen not to. I used to think it was probably because it would sound clunky mixed in with contemporary music, but after singing and listening to people sing them, that just isn't true. So thank you for your question, Matt.
Mm.
Gabe, what do you think?
What is the verse again? I know we just read it.
So there's Colossians, there's Ephesians.
Okay.
So Colossians 3:16, Ephesians 5:19.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
mention of psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs.
Ephesians 5:19.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just
And
curious what different translations say here in that.
Colossians 3:16.
So yeah, it's interesting that NIV says speak to one another with psalms. ESV address one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with your heart. King James has speaking to yourselves in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. So it's interesting. Yeah, no, I think singing the singing from the book of Psalms is great and fantastic. I mean, there's musicians out there and bands out there like for one would be Sons of Korah. They do exclusively the Psalms. Then there's a Israeli band that I super love called Mikedem. They do almost exclusively Psalms with a little bit of other, like some from Isaiah and different things. But they do exclusively in Hebrew, which is really cool.
Oh, that's interesting.
But they have really Israeli kind of Middle Eastern sound to them.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's really cool. But I don't know that you can say, and we do at our congregation. I mean, we sing a lot of the Shane and Shane. They have some albums that are really good.
Yeah. Yeah. They
The
have a whole album
Psalms.
of psalms. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love those, and we do some of those.
Yeah.
Like their Psalm 46, the their Psalm 42, Psalm 98 is another really good one. They have some really good renditions of those Psalms. They're
Oh, yeah.
not word for word, verbatim of those
Mm-hmm.
Psalms, but they're almost and they're largely inspired by those. I think it's a really good thing to do, but I don't know that you can read Ephesians 5:19 and this one in Colossians and say that we are limited to only singing psalms. You only got just that book that you can sing during your praise and worship set
Right.
from.
So would some people take that and say, okay, in a service, you have to have a psalm, you have to have a hymn, and then you have to have a spiritual song?
Mm.
I mean, if somebody takes that as straightforward and as literal
Yeah.
as that, right?
Yeah.
But I guess what Matt's asking is why don't people take it as straightforward and literal as that? Because it seems like it's very rare
Yeah.
for most evangelical congregations to just straight up
Yeah.
sing
Well,
a psalm.
I would say that I would argue that they maybe do, because I mean, what
Okay.
is in the Greek? It's a ode pneumatikai. I mean,
Hmm.
what is that? Um, that's a song that's inspired by the pneuma.
Spiritual song. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so if someone writes a song, like we're trying to schedule a songwriting night for our worship team, where we birth a song into the world, and it's it's going to be, hopefully it's
Those are
going to be
fun.
spirit inspired.
Right.
It's going to be scripture and spirit inspired, which I think that's they go hand in hand. But I think if you look at a lot of worship music out there, not all of it, I'm just going to be honest
Sure.
with you, but
Sure. Sure.
a
Sure.
lot
Yeah.
of
Some
it
of it isn't good.
is,
Yeah.
I would say it's an ode of the spirit. It's inspired by the pneuma.
Right.
There's some, I would say, like, for instance, who's it, Andrew Peterson's Is He Worthy?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Fantastic.
that's
I've been
not,
listening to that album all week, the Resurrection Letters album.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Fantastic.
there's,
Yeah.
I would say some like, Praise the Name, Shane and Shane.
Hmm.
Um, those are, I would say they're clearly like spirit inspired songs, but they're not direct quotations from anywhere in the Bible. They're inspired by different parts
Sure.
of the Bible,
Sure.
obviously, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think, Matt, to really answer the why behind why certain congregations might do it explicitly and have a
Mm-hmm.
song that is quite literally, Psalm 23 set to, music, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, we're going to sing a psalm and then we'll sing a spiritual song and we'll sing a hymn, is because we've talked about this in the podcast before. There's two different principles of worship. One is called the regulative principle and one's called the normative principle. You remember this, Gabe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember when we went over this, but
Ooh.
what were we going to say?
Oh, maybe during, like, when we're talking about Bethel and all that, Bethel music. I don't know.
Maybe.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, perhaps, because we were talking about worship then, so it could have been then. But at any rate, the regulative principle basically says that a church can only practice elements of worship that are explicitly commanded or clearly implied in Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
So, to a church that follows the regulative principle, they would read those passages in Colossians and Ephesians, and they would say, a church service, for it to be a biblical church service, has to have a psalm, it has to have a hymn, and it has to have a spiritual song. And some regulative principle churches will go so far as to say it says making melody in your hearts to the Lord. It doesn't say anything about using instruments, so you can't use instruments because it's not explicitly stated or commanded in the Scripture. Make sense? So I think that's why some people will take that and take it very, very literal, as if to say that a church that isn't doing it is somehow being disobedient to the biblical directive. The other view of worship is called the normative principle, and it is that a church can incorporate any practices of worship that are not explicitly forbidden by Scripture, as long as they're consistent with Christian doctrine and they're held in such a way that it actually helps the congregation, it builds up the congregation. So, like, the Bible says nothing about having a church choir, right? It doesn't say anything about using contemporary music or not using contemporary music. It doesn't say anything about specific forms in the liturgy, creative forms of expression, whatever. But a normative principle church would say, man, we don't see those directly commanded in Scripture, but they are permissible in helping a church worship God. And so here's how those two types of churches would view those commands in Colossians and Ephesians. A regulative principle church would say psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. Okay, worship service has to have a psalm, worship service has to have an hymn, and a worship service have to have a spiritual song. But a normative principle church would say we have permission to be able to choose whatever style of music we feel like best serves the congregation, and it can be any of those things, but it doesn't have to be all three of those things in the same service, and the lines between what those things are can kind of be blurred at times. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because we have to admit, the New Testament doesn't actually give us explicit definitions for what is the difference between a hymn and a spiritual song.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's probably why, Matt. I don't know if that answers the question or not. A lot of evangelical churches would say, man, singing psalms is great. It's good. But they would see modern worship songs and hymns, like Gabe said, drawing heavily from the themes of the psalms. And so kind of the point and the exercise and the spirit of the psalms is alive and well in their worship services.
Mm.
And so as long as that worship is not getting out of bounds, it's not being distracting, it's not pointing people away, then, they would say they are following that directive in Scripture.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, so regulative versus normative worship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, and so many denominations, like the Reformed and Presbyterian traditions, are often regulative principle, and they have this long practice of psalm singing.
Yeah.
And so you see it really heavily in those services. Interestingly, the Church of Christ here in Tennessee are also regulative principle, but their big thing, their emphasis as they read those is making melody in your hearts to the Lord. So, meaning you can have instruments.
Interesting.
Which is funny because, as far as I know, they don't make it to where you have to sing the Psalms, but they would say they are the most New Testament church there is. So there you go.
Yeah, and I understand and appreciate a lot of the rationale behind some of these concerns is that sometimes things just go off the rails in terms of music. And music, I think, is one of the fastest ways you see a church go off the rails.
Absolutely.
Music, I don't know about you, Josh, but music for me, praise and worship garners the most feedback, whether it be positive or negative, from people in our congregants, more than anything else. It is.
I could get up there and teach blatant heresy, and people probably won't notice as much as they will about they didn't like that song.
Yeah. Like if you say David Crowder's Sloppy Wet Kiss version, you're gonna hear, you're gonna.
This is the John Mark McMillan version.
Yeah. But you you get up there and talk about, confess to everyone that you're Unitarian or something like that. They're going to focus on the Sloppy Wet Kiss,
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
And I understand the rationale. It's like you want to keep things biblical, and I think that's very important. I appreciate that.
I think concern about worship should primarily be, number one, is it biblical and is it theologically sound? Number two, is it distracting or is it worshipful, right? Is it a performance or is it actually encouraging people to sing congregationally? And then I think the idea of excellence in worship is actually really important too. Now, people listening to this podcast might disagree with me because they say, well, it says make a joyful noise to the Lord. I think because I studied, 15 years of my life as a concert cellist, I think I probably see it a little bit differently. Like, you don't get out there and you just half butt it when you're performing for an audience. And I think if you're bringing your offering to the Lord, those who are leading that offering should know how to play skillfully. That's just me.
Yeah.
So you can disagree with me. You can call that my bias as a musician, but I think it's really distracting when you have a team of musicians leading you that they don't know their stuff. They've not practiced. They've not prepared. That's really distracting. So that's a big deal for us. We take excellence in worship and instrumentation and vocalization really, really important. So
you're like, we will win that battle of the bands.
The Christian battle of the band. We're coming for you, Chris Tomlin. Just kidding. They were not coming for you, Chris Tomlin. You're safe in Bridgestone Arena. All right. Well, Matt, hope we answered your question. Love to hear more about it. So thank you for that question. Shall we move on to the next topic at hand? And that is the tariffs of 2025.
Wow. It's a big leap in topic there.
I'm telling you. Regulative and normative principle of worship into the tariffs of 2025.
Yeah.
Easy transition.
Let me put my economist hat on now.
Yes. Okay, so before we get started, here's what I want you to know. If you're watching on YouTube and your fingers are over the keyboard because you're ready to blast Gabe and I because you're ultra conservative and you are trying to defend Trump to the bitter end, save your comment because we're not here to crucify Donald Trump. And if you hate Donald Trump, you hate everything he's doing, you think he's running the country into the mud, and you're waiting on pins and needles to crucify Gabe and I because you're saying, hey, you just a bunch of worthless evangelicals supporting Donald Trump no matter what he does. Chill. Down, boy. What?
Are you calling us a dog? Don't talk to us like we're dogs.
I'm sorry. Here's what we're going to do, okay? We're going to read the facts.
How dare you assume my gender? Say down, boy.
Now we're really going to get some listener hate mail. Thanks for that, Gabe.
Yeah.
We're going to read the facts. We're going to do everything we can to leave our biases out of it, and you decide. So we'll do everything we can to paint the picture of what happened and what is happening. Right, wrong, indifferent. That's up to you to decide how you feel about it. But I think that there's a lot of words that have been thrown around, and honestly, I know this is embarrassing for some people to admit, but some people don't even have a basic working definition of tariff. And that word's been used everywhere, right? And so what we want to do is, if you've been too embarrassed to ask anybody, what is a tariff? How does it work? Why is this happening? We want to paint the picture for you, tell you what we know about what's happening, and then you can decide if it's good, bad, or you hate Trump, or you whatever. Sound good?
Mm-hmm. Terrific.
Okay.
Terrific.
So on April 2nd, President Trump announced a comprehensive new tariff policy, which he called Liberation Day, in the Rose Garden of the White House. And it was the signing of Executive Order 14257 that introduced a reciprocal tariff strategy that was aimed at addressing what he described as decades of unfair trade practices, disadvantaging American manufacturing and American workers. And so what it was a universal tariff, so a baseline tariff on nearly all imports. So that's 10% on all imports. We'll unpack what a tariff is here in a minute if you don't know what that is. And then there were country-specific tariffs that were basically on varying rates based on what tariffs were imposed against us. For example, China started off with, and then we've seen how that's escalated, like a 34% tariff. Vietnam was 46%, and all these things. But basically, they were set on the basis of what the other countries had imposed against us in terms of tariff. There was an auto industry tariff that was 25% tariff on all imported cars and car parts. And so here's what happened. So it was announced. It led to immediate volatility in global financial markets, the stock market, major indices like the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. There were all these losses for days following the announcement. And President Trump said that this was a declaration of economic independence, meaning that the tariffs were necessary to make right these long-standing trade deficits, and then to promote domestic manufacturing where we're making our own goods and services here instead of being reliant on foreign products and goods. So, Gabe, is that kind of a nutshell of what happened? Anything to add to that, or is that kind of where you understand what happened with that?
Yeah. It seems. I think it's worth talking about his reasons in imposing these tariffs. Like, what were his motivations?
Okay. Yeah. You want to get there now? You want to get there a little bit later?
Yeah. So, from what I understand, the reason why we are imposing these different tariffs, these reciprocal tariffs on countries, is because he wants to promote industry and productivity within the U.S. Am I correct?
Yep.
So cars, for instance, he's imposing tariffs on foreign-made cars so that we would buy more domestically produced cars.
Right.
And then therefore it's kind of stimulate economic growth within the United States because people are saying, well, that's going to be cheaper. Domestic is cheaper than foreign because of these tariffs. So therefore I'm going to go buy domestic, and therefore that's going to create more jobs domestically because that demand is going to, so that's kind of, I guess that's the reasoning. I would
say that's the strategy. Yeah. It's kind of three Like the first would be obviously what you said, kind of forcing domestic produced products to be what consumers would buy.
Yeah.
The second would be reducing trade deficits. So, like this attempt to try to decrease the gap between imports and exports.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've been being hit by foreign tariffs for, decades and decades and decades from these other countries. And then the third is really to strengthen national security. So when you reduce reliance on foreign goods, the thought is that you become more stronger because you're not as dependent on other countries.
Mm-hmm.
And so, from what I understand, that was really the hope of the Trump administration for kind of putting these tariffs on. So, how would you explain a tariff? You used to teach high school history, right?
Yeah.
So, what would you say to someone who has never? They're hearing this word in the news all the time: tariff, 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 and they're like kind of too embarrassed to ask anybody. Okay, what's a tariff? What's the easiest way to explain a tariff?
It's basically a tax imposed on the importer of not the importer, I guess the manufacturer, based on usually a percentage of the value of that good. So if it's an iPhone or whatever, a set of headphones, it's coming from China, let's say, the assessed value of that is $30, then it's going to be taxed, and then the country of origin or the producer of that product then has to pay that. So it's basically like an import tax, you could say.
Right.
That's supposedly, ideally, isn't then passed on to the consumer or the recipient of those products.
Right.
But I think the idea is that it will be in a way passed down to the consumer. The consumer then will then say, "Wait a second, those headphones produced in China they've gone up 50% in cost, but these ones here that were made in the United States have not. Therefore, I'm going to buy the ones made in the United States."
Yeah.
I think that's one of the motivating factors of this.
Yeah, absolutely. That it would basically, okay, those goods are more expensive to buy in my country because there's a tariff on Chinese-made goods, right?
Yeah,
but these American-made headphones, just as good, but they're cheaper. I'm going to buy the American-made headphones. So the thought is the trickle-down effect is that makes American manufacturing and domestic goods
more desirable.
Right.
Yeah.
So tariffs are often used as a bargaining tactic to try to get other countries to change their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a country is really reliant on selling their goods and services to other countries, then that would be really bad news if, the biggest buyer of their product says, well, we're posing a tariff, right? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, that's awful. What do we do, right? And so really, I think the Trump administration has claimed that since they signed this executive order, there's been all these different countries that have come forward and said, hey, we want to lower our tariffs. Please don't put this tariff on us. We'll do what you're asking to do and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, as far as that goes, do you know any more information about if that has been successful as a bargaining tactic so far?
I think it's too early to tell still, but we can kind of make an analogy of it's kind of like two steam locomotives barreling down the tracks towards each other. It's a game of chicken, economic chicken, with very, very high stakes.
Yes.
And I think Trump is basically saying, I'm not getting off the tracks. I'm not moving out of your way. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to get out of the way. You're going to have to cave on this. Right. And it just depends. I don't know the cards that China holds. I don't know if he fully knows either. But I don't know if they fully know the cards we hold. So it just depends on who's more desperate than the other.
And you mentioned,
I say China just because they're the biggest,
right?
The biggest probably shareholder of these tariffs than any other country. There's a lot of countries that we're imposing reciprocal tariffs on, but yeah, I think it's a really, really high stakes game of economic chicken that we're playing.
Right.
Here's one concern I have, I guess, with the tariffs. That I don't know, not fully convinced of them yet, but why are all these manufacturing jobs overseas to begin with? Answer me that.
Hmm.
Like,
Cheaper
okay,
labor.
yeah, cheaper labor. Why?
Yeah. Human rights concerns.
Why? Yeah, why else?
Yeah.
Why does General Electric make its appliances in Korea or Brazil, or why does Apple make its phones in China?
Is
What's
it? I mean,
what's
just because of there's not like labor laws over there, so cheaper workforce because people could work 80
right?
hours a week, and it's a
Yeah, yeah,
sweatshop. Nobody cares, basically.
yeah, exactly. So we have in the United
Yeah.
States of America a system set up where we have things like minimum wage. We have laws that say if you are a full time employee, your employer has to offer you benefits.
Hmm.
You have to pay them overtime if they hit over 40 hours. There's regulations that come along with opening a factory and EPA and all this other stuff,
Right.
OSHA. We got all this stuff that makes it, if I'm a very rich entrepreneur and I'm comparing the laws of the United States of America and how much I have to pay the average hourly employee, that's just one small facet of it,
Sure.
versus I could go to Vietnam, and I could open a factory in Vietnam, and
Right. Right.
I mean it's like a wild west there.
Sure.
Of course, I'm going to go. Money and wealth always flows to the place of least resistance.
Hmm.
So I'm worried that if we impose all these reciprocal tariffs on all these different countries, yet we still have really expensive uh, manufacturing in the United States of America, really expensive. It costs a lot to manufacture things in the United States of America. I mean, you have
Right.
unions are a big part of that too.
Oh, sure.
Um, I'm worried that we're not fixing the thing that caused all those jobs and all that manufacturing to go overseas, to be offshore to begin with.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? And
Yeah. So
so
basically, saying we're too regulated here in terms of manufacturing, and
potentially,
so
yeah, yeah,
trying to get domestic jobs back, there has to probably be some deregulation to break some of that up in order for that. I mean, but at the same
yeah.
time, like ethical labor laws, I would say is a good thing. Like I'm glad that my 8-year-old can't get a job at a coal mine. Like
I think,
some days
I
I feel
think
like sending him down to a coal mine, but
that's, yeah. I mean, I those laws had their time and place. I would look at, are those still relevant? Like, would you even let your 8-year-old go work? I think you're at a point economically. We're all at a point economically where we don't have to send our children to work in coal mines. So I would look
yeah,
at what are some of these laws on the books that are antiquated now and no longer necessary, but are setting ourselves up for really expensive manufacturing jobs. Or the average the average American is just really entitled. Let's just be honest. I
yeah.
work in construction. If it wasn't for a certain class of people coming over our southern border who are willing to climb up on roofs and dangle from ropes and hold a
Mm,
nail gun in one hand and a rope in the other,
houses would never be built.
houses would cost 5 times as much.
Right.
Now, I I don't want people to be here illegally, but there is a class of people who are here illegal, let's just face it, and
Hmm.
they are desperate for money, and they're willing to work for 1/3 or 25% of what the average 19 to 22-year-old in the United States of America is
Yep.
willing to work for.
Yep.
And because of that, we can build houses significantly cheaper. Now, I don't know all these people's status. That I'm not supposed to know that.
Right.
That's none of my business. But I do know that they're hardworking individuals and
Sure.
they know how to build houses. And I don't know if 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 they just went away. I don't think we would have enough Americans
Who would be willing to do that
who
work?
would be willing to do
Yeah.
that for
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
they do
Yeah.
it for, or even know how to do it. Let's just be
Right.
honest.
Yeah. And that's such
Yeah.
an interesting conundrum because it's kind of like you look back and you go, man, we need more jobs
Mm-hmm.
here for people who, obviously unemployed. They need work. We need growth in jobs. Yes and amen. But we've got to have people that are willing to work them.
Right.
And so that impact, I guess we're going to see. I mean, time will tell, right? But so far, what we have seen the tariffs do is slowed down kind of what economists have predicted the economy to grow by. So the economy grew by 2.8% in 2024, and the U.S. economy is projected to grow by 1.8%. So because of increased costs and trade tension. The second thing that's been impacted so far is higher prices for consumers. So we've seen a 2.3% increase in overall prices, which translates to about $3,800 per household annually.
Wow.
We've seen stock market volatility. So the S&P 500 dropped like 10% in early April.
Yeah. I saw that in my 401k.
I did too. I saw that, and I got an email from my financial planner. It's okay, just hang tight. And I'm like, so
yeah, I mean, it's a game of chicken. It's like we're all on the train together.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're trusting the conductor of the train, engineering. Okay, hey,
yeah. Here is one impact.
We elected
though.
you.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, the one impact though that you don't hear as much on the news is the tariffs are expected to raise $166.6 billion in federal tax revenues in 2025. So that's more increased government revenue since 1993.
Wow.
So if you're paying attention to the national debt, I mean, it's pretty significant.
Yeah, it would be.
So there's impacts on the global economy. I don't know as much about that. I've got a couple of things written down just from stuff that I read. But the International Monetary Fund has lowered its global growth forecast basically because of that. I'm not as familiar with that, so I can't really speak to a lot of that stuff, but it's had some global impacts as well. So here's kind of the big question. Are the tariffs working to achieve the goal of the Trump administration?
Yeah.
Says.
It's too early to tell. Too early. Yeah. I think he said this, that it's got to get worse before it gets better.
Sure.
I think it's like, this tariffs are like the shot in the butt that we don't want, but we all need. Maybe. It could be.
Cue the angry YouTube comments.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that. Have you ever had a penicillin peanut butter shot? You know what those are?
No.
Dude, they're like, okay. I think that's maybe just an army thing. Maybe that's what it is.
Sounds
but
like
it's
an army thing. Yeah.
It's a syringe filled, I kid you not, like peanut butter. And it is like just penicillin. They just poke you in your butt cheek and push it in there. And man, it is so painful. Golly. But if you don't get that, you run the potential of getting some kind of nasty staph or MRSA or whatever.
Right.
But it's like, maybe that's it. Maybe it's a little bit of pain that we have to experience to get this ship righted. Because that is something, I mean, no one's talking about. Is like, this is not sustainable. The trajectory United States of America economy is on is not sustainable.
Yeah, that's
something
true.
Has to be done. And the worst decision is no decision.
Right.
But yeah, it's just a matter of time. And we'll be talking next year, looking at this in retrospect and saying this was either a really good idea or a really, really bad idea.
Sure.
We'll know more then.
So kind of the big four things are, number one, how long do the tariffs last? Mm-hmm. So how long are we going to keep playing chicken with other countries in terms of tariffs on imports and exports? Number two, whether or not new trade deals get made between different countries. Mm-hmm. So let's hope and pray that they do, right? Number three, whether or not U.S. industries can rise to the occasion and compete and grow now that there's going to be a demand for their products instead of just reliance on all the different, foreign markets. And then number four, how the global economy responds, because we're dependent, we're interconnected kind of in the global age. So, I guess we'll see. Proof is going to be in the pudding. Again, I hope everybody hears our hearts in this. We're not trying one side or the other. Just, this is a giant experiment that the Trump administration is doing. It's very risky. So
I think what's really interesting about it is like, he had probably like 100 days. We're almost at the 100-day mark, I think, or right at it. Mm-hmm. He had 100 days or just over it to kind of prove himself. And what's interesting is that he has basically politically almost like kind of shot himself in the foot over this because I mean, we're about to start ramping up midterm elections for Congress.
Yep.
And we, Congress is pretty 50-50 split right now. It's not like there's a super majority or anything in Congress. And so, just a few seats flip over and Trump's a lame duck.
Right.
But what's interesting is that he made this decision probably knowing that, and maybe going against some of his advisors' counsel. Hey, if you do this, you're going to lose the midterms. Well, maybe he was like, well, we got to do it anyways, because this is like we're at the 11th hour on the economy or whatever. I don't know. But
and his approval rating has taken some hits.
Yeah.
I mean, some massive hits. I mean, he hits a historic, like one of the best approval ratings in the first 100 days in any president for the past 20, 30 years. And then after these tariffs, I mean, his approval rating related to the economy has kind of gone in the tubes. So it's a gamble. Yeah, apparently one he seems to believe in. So I guess time will tell if it pays off or it doesn't. So
we elected him. It was a vast majority of Americans who did, and we're on the train. So hang on, kids. We'll see. I mean, we should pray for. We should pray for. We should pray for our leaders that they have.
We should.
They have wisdom on it. I'm trusting that there's people in his cabinet that are way smarter than any of us, and just have to hope and trust that they are steering the ship where it needs to go.
Yeah. Gosh. Other big news story happened yesterday. Pope Francis, the leader of the Roman Catholic Church, passed away on Easter Monday, April 21st. And Pope Francis is a very different pope. He has a very unique legacy. He's the first Latin American pope. And he is remembered by the world at large for making the church more compassionate and seemingly inclusive. And so his focus was more on helping the poor, protecting the environment, reaching out to what he considered marginalized groups like LGBTQ individuals, divorced Catholics. He really worked to reform the church leadership, address things like sexual abuse, financial scandals. So well-loved in certain circles, well-loved by the progressives, well-loved by legacy media. But at the same time, a very controversial pope. Because he allowed for things like blessings for same-sex couples. He limited the use of the old Latin Mass, which was a really controversial thing. Because are you familiar with that?
No.
So for the longest time, from what I understand, if you're a Roman Catholic listening, you can send us an email and help kind of correct it. From what I understand, the Catholic Church for, long time, all of its masses globally were held in Latin. And so the church changed it to allow for a mass in the mother tongue of whatever diocese or whatever that church was. But there was a lot of conservative Catholics that wanted to go back to doing mass the old way in Latin. And Francis basically limited their ability to do it.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so for that reason, he was very not liked amongst conservative Catholics. And so conservative Catholics, especially here in the U.S., criticized him for these changes and really accused him of straying from church teachings. So the big question is, okay, Francis started taking the Catholic Church into a more progressive, liberal direction. What happens next?
Yeah.
So that's the thing everybody's waiting on.
Yeah.
What happens next?
That is interesting. Yeah, and I was reading up on how popes are selected, and
it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Did you see Conclave? That movie I told you about?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh, go watch Conclave.
It is a little bit suspicious that you decided to do an episode on apostolic succession.
And then he died right after that.
And then he dies right after that. Yeah.
Maybe he listened to the Beard Dozen podcast and he said, I think I can go home to be with the Jesus. And then I don't know if he talks like that, but anyway.
I don't know. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, and it's interesting because, we're not Catholics, but the Catholic Church is a massive institution that has unimaginable authority. And that authority does trickle down. That influence does trickle down even into Protestant world, whether we want to acknowledge it or not.
Yep.
It is there. So I think it's worth following and watching, not because we have a horse in the race, but because the Pope that is selected is going to exert influence and authority over millions of people.
Absolutely.
In the world.
Yeah, and we're going to see the impact. I mean, we saw the impact that Francis made.
Yeah.
In the sense that I think his the way that he related to the LGBTQ issue, I think kind of gave license to a lot more people to say, oh, I'm a gay Christian, or I'm a gay Catholic, or you can be a Christian that's still homosexual, and not even think twice about it, and then kind of point to this authoritative figure. I mean, gosh, Pope Francis seems to, allow for a blessing for same-sex couples. So what's the big deal, right?
Right.
So whether you're Roman Catholic or not, the influence of whoever is leading the Catholic Church is going to be felt by anyone who's a Christian.
It trickles
right,
down.
Wrong, or indifferent. Yeah, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of different leading candidates to replace Pope. There is Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. I think I'm saying that name right. Either Tagal or Tagle. He's from the Philippines. He is known as the Asian Francis. He supports inclusivity and social justice. He would be considered probably the second most liberal candidate out there. And he right now seems to be the front runner. So we'll talk about betting odds here in a little bit, and then we'll make our picks.
Okay.
And we'll see who wins. So is it a sin in the Catholic Church to bet on who the next pope is going to be, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a thing that's going on the internet right now, I'm sure.
It is. That's why I thought it was so funny. I was looking at all these different candidates. I was like, man, who's the front runner? And then I saw betting odds. It's like, are you kidding me? People are betting on who the next pope is going to be? But anyway. So front runner is that guy from the Philippines, Luis Antonio Tagle, or Tagle, however you say his last name, Tagle. The second most liberal is Cardinal Matteo Zuppi. He's very close to Pope Francis. He's worked on peace efforts and supports church reforms. He would be considered, I said second most liberal. He'd probably be considered the most liberal of all. So those two guys would be kind of leading the more liberal, progressive side of the conclave. Then there's Cardinal Robert Sarah from Guinea. He'd be a conservative who favors traditional church teachings and practices. He's a very staunch traditionalist. He is the most conservative of all of the cardinals that could be chosen. Cardinal Pietro Parolin from Italy. He's the Vatican Secretary of State. He's very moderate. Here's one that I think is really interesting. Cardinal Peter Turkson from Ghana. He would be the first African pope elected. So kind of a blend of social justice and also very conservative as well. So pretty interesting. And then Cardinal Kevin Farrell from, I guess, USA, and then he's also Irish. He's currently managing the Vatican's affairs. What's so funny about that?
Oh, I just looked up a picture of Kevin Farrell, Cardinal. Is
he funny looking?
He just looks like a really sweet old grandpa. I don't know. It just brought a smile to my face. I don't know.
Look him up.
Yeah.
Describe to our people.
He just got some really rosy cheeks and just like kind of pudgy and just looks like a sweet old man. I don't know.
Oh, he does.
Look like he just has like some Werthers in his pocket that he wants to
he does. Come here, son. Come here. I'll give you some Werthers. That's
the voice of a character that we don't want to pope.
The old grandpa from Family Guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want him as the Pope. Yeah.
No.
That's probably not good. And then probably the second most conservative outside of Robert Sarah from Guinea would be Cardinal Raymond Burke, and he's also from the U.S. He has been very critical of Pope Francis.
Okay.
And he has supported traditional Catholic doctrines and very pro-marriage, very pro-family, very like anti-contraceptive, very pro-life.
Huh.
That's another thing to think through too. The Catholic Church is perhaps just globally, the biggest force for pro-life causes in the entire world.
Yeah, that's true.
So it really does matter who the next pope is. If you're pro-life
on that
for
front,
that,
yeah.
Yeah, so we will have a papal conclave to elect a new pope, probably between May 6th and May 12th. There's going to be a 15 to 20-day period after Pope Francis' death, kind of to mourn him and for people to come see him. And then 135 cardinals under the age of 80 will gather in the Sistine Chapel to vote in secrecy until a new pope is chosen. And when a new pope is chosen, there will be white smoke that is seen from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel that tells that the pope has been selected. So there you go. You're smiling again. Who'd you Google?
I just looked up a picture of Matteo Zuppi. Just
okay.
It's an interesting looking fellow.
Let's look him up. Is that the that's the one who's called the Asian Francis?
I don't know. No, I don't think he's Asian.
Oh no, he's Italian. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
he's
Italian.
He looks like he has an inside joke that he's about to tell you.
Yeah, for real. I don't know if I want to hear that inside joke. I'm gonna pick the one
mischievous look on his face. Yeah.
I'm picking the one who looks the most like Steven Seagal for no reason, just because.
Who is the one that looks most like Steven Seagal?
It's gonna have to go to Cardinal Pietro Parolin. Of all these guys, looks the most like Steven Seagal. That's the closest I can get. Yeah, so I think that's my prediction.
Okay.
I mean, he looks nothing like Steven Seagal, but he's the closest.
He looks the closest like Steven Seagal?
Yeah.
Okay. I could see that. Kind of. Not really, but I'll indulge you for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Not
all right. So here are the betting odds. Luis Antonio Tagal from the Philippines. His odds are 1-1 to plus 100. So he's got about a 50% probability. So he's the front runner. Mm-hmm. Pietro Parolin. His odds are plus 150 to plus 250, so about a 28.6% to 40% implied probability. Matteo Zuppi of Italy, his odds are around plus 600, so a probability about 14%. And then the one from Ghana, plus 600 to plus 800, so about 11 to 14%.
Okay.
So, Gabe, shall we make our picks? And then we'll see sometime in May when a new pope is selected who's selected.
I'm going to go with my buddy Pietro.
Okay, let the record reflect that Gabe has picked Pietro Parolin to be the next pope.
Pietro. Come on, buddy.
Okay, I'm going to pick the underdog, the dark horse. I'm going to pick my buddy Peter Turkson from Ghana, first African pope.
Yeah.
Mainly because I want to see an African pope. I think that's awesome.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, and maybe there has been an African pope, like North Africa. But,
so is he your DEI hire then? Your DEI pope?
No, I think most denominations in Africa that are historic mainland denominations are far more conservative and biblically grounded than ones in the West.
Okay.
So
yeah, you're thinking of very mature adult lines.
So I would love to see him become the Pope. So
hey, to our Catholic listeners, can you just email your people and tell them to bury Pope Francis already? Just please just bury him. Let him rest in peace. I'm watching the news, man, and just like he's just on display, and like people walking up and sprinkling stuff on him and just like talking to him. Just if it were me, I'd just be like, guys, come on.
Just go ahead and just let it go. Ground already.
Let it go.
I mean, he just passed yesterday, though. I mean, give him a break. This is his wake,
I guess.
Yeah, but I think it's supposed to be like a 15 to 20 day period, so that's a long wait.
Yeah, I was sitting next to Micah on the couch, and he's 8 years old. And he's like watching this guy like sprinkle water on the Pope Francis body, and he's like, "Is that guy dead?" And I was like, yeah. And he's like, so I'm looking at a dead body, and I'm like, yeah, that's a dead body.
on
And
the news.
He's like, well, why is that guy sprinkling with water then? I'm like, there are things I do not know the answer to. I'm sorry, but these are unanswerable questions.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So if you're Roman Catholic and you want to add to the conversation, send us an email. Yeah, we don't claim to be experts on the Roman Catholic Church or the Orthodox Church, Isaac Escobar. So we said that at the beginning of the episode, but apparently somebody's not listening. So anyway, I blame Gabe.
Yeah.
So, well, cool, Gabe. We jumped around a lot tonight.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add to any of these things?
No, I feel like my brain is just so much more functional during this time of day.
Really?
Than at 5:15 in the morning. Oh yeah. No, like 7:15 in the morning is like the pinnacle of brain functionality for Gabe Rutledge. But yeah, no.
I'm kind of the opposite. My brain functions really well at 5, so we can go back and forth. So
yeah,
since I served you tonight by hopping on in the evening, maybe you can serve me next time by hopping on in the morning. So
the only thing after 9 p.m., my sense of humor tends to get more and more immature. So we have to be mindful of that.
Yeah. That is definitely something to thank God for the genius of editing. I can always take things out that are too lowbrow. So, but you were good tonight. I think you did well. So
thank you.
Yeah. Well, if anybody has any questions or thoughts or wants to crucify us via the YouTube comments, direct them all towards Gabe. Send us an email, beersandbiblepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll see you guys next time.